Hi, this is Kowski, and in this video we're going to be looking at the impact of King Philip's War, which is going to set off a chain reaction that will eventually lead to the remnants of self-government in the colonies, which eventually will be a springboard to the American Revolutionary War. So let's get right into it. So when you look at King Philip's War, it was considered really the most devastating conflict, just in sheer percentages of the population that had been killed in this conflict. So if you were to go back to the year 1600, you have about 100,000 Native Americans living just in the New England area alone. By 1675, of course, disease will come in particular. You'll see those numbers begin to dwindle quite rapidly down to just a mere 10,000 Native Americans. Why King Philip's War is important, especially in the short term, is that it's really the ultimate nail in the coffin for the Native Americans in the New England location. So we're going to get to the aftermath in a moment, but this is the immediate short-term effect just simply on the Native American numbers in New England. So when we compare this to really how the Spanish dealt with Native Americans versus how the British dealt with the Native Americans, you had similar issues with respect to controlling them. Now, with Philip's War, we know that it's going to be very devastating for the Native Americans. However, in Spain's empire, they are going to encounter the Pueblo revolt. Spain, after that revolt, is actually going to provide greater freedoms to the Native Americans. In contrast, for the British, this is going to be the nail in the coffin for the native people. So it's interesting how the colonists in the British mother country and the government are clamping down, whereas in Spain, they are loosening it up. So quite a significant contrast between how these major empires are dealing with Native Americans. Now, of course, you're going to see that really why the British are clamping down and control. A lot of this just goes back to the ways in which certain groups who settled thought about their superiority of Native Americans. Of course, the Spanish still had those ideas of superiority, but to some degree more, you see this a little bit more with Puritans and their concept of religion, and that certain people are part of the elect and others are not. Certainly, they would think that Native Americans are not part of the elect, that they were quote-unquote savages. So it makes sense to a degree that from the Puritan point of view, that they would mistreat people, especially those who are non-Christian. So tensions are going to emerge, and why King Philip's War is important is not just because, again, it's going to be that final nail for the Native Americans in their quote-unquote coffin, but it's putting the colonies on the royal radar. At this point, King Charles II back in England is nearing the end. He doesn't really have that much time left on his reign, only a few years, but he was very important. At one point, he's going to restore the monarchy after Oliver Cromwell takes over and disposes his predecessor. But Charles II is important because he's going to restore the monarchy and he's going to bring stability to it. So under his reign, right, he sees, and most people saw that the colonies in North America are rather poor outposts. There's not that much attention going on to them. But King Philip's War is going to put New England back on the colony's radar. It's going to get his attention because you have this significant war. And even though the English win it, it's going to get into the mind of King Charles II to say, well, maybe there is some wealth that can be extracted from New England. Keep in mind that we've had the Navigation Acts passed not too long ago. However, they're not really being enforced. There's a lot of smuggling. There's a lot of illegal trade going on, people ignoring the Navigation Acts. So he's seeing this as an opportunity to make New England a profitable colony, and he wants to make sure that these Navigation Acts are eventually going to get passed, or not necessarily passed, but enforced. So he's going to see that the wealth could go back to England and make it wealthier. Remember what concept that this is highlighting. This is mercantilism 101, where you want to get raw materials, you want to make these colonies profitable to make ultimately the mother country, in this case England, wealthy. So the king, after King Philip's War, is going to make this a royal colony. He's going to consolidate all of New England into a single royal colony. So you're not going to have all these colonies split up. And it's going to be under one governor named Sir Edmund Andros, who's going to control the area of New England known as the Dominion of New England. And one of the miscalculated moves by this new governor of this Dominion of New England is going to be that he's going to basically come in guns blazing and saying, you know what, to the colonist people who have been living there, you have no more privileges. And you are saying this to people who have been in New England for years without really any interference from the crown. And of course this is going to cause an uproar. He's going to begin to enforce the navigation acts, and this is going to create a lot of enemies. So while the Dominion of New England is going to be rather short-lived, only about 4 years, all these problems come back to King Philip's War, because again, this is getting the attention of the king. So if you look here on this map right here, and I'll expand this right here, you'll see that this is the Dominion of New England, and this is where the navigation acts are being enforced in particular. Also note that New Jersey, even part of the East Jersey and the bottom southern part of New Jersey, was actually considered part of the Dominion of New England. Interesting that, of course, today New Jersey and New York are not considered part of New England, but at this point it certainly was. But again, he's going to begin to start to enforce these navigation acts, which were never enforced before. And of course, you're going to create a lot of uproar and, of course, discontent to the crown at this point. So Charles II, as I mentioned earlier, really doesn't have much time left in his reign. He will die, and soon after you'll see the Dominion of New England also dying. But James II is going to take over following him. But the problem is he's a Catholic in a British, I'm sorry, not a British, but a Protestant country. And certainly by this time, many Britons see themselves as Protestant. So you have a Catholic monarch taking over a Protestant country that's not going to be too, popular. So there's going to be this idea that we need to get rid of this Catholic king. Well, long and behold, the Glorious Revolution is going to occur, where William of Orange and Mary II are going to be brought in as a Protestant monarchy, and they're going to restore Protestantism to England without a single death, believe it or not. It's actually a bloodless revolution. Now, again, understanding Protestant Catholicism in Great Britain is not really the central focus here. Why we care about the Glorious Revolution is that this is going to divert the attention of England away from the colonies and to more of this revolution that's going on. So while there are revolts that are going to happen specifically in Boston and New York that are going to eventually lead to the end of the Dominion of New England, it's also the Glorious Revolution that's going to distract the British monarchy away from the colonies. So what you have that's going to set in is something called salutary neglect. It's this new unofficial policy, and it's a beneficial neglect. We salute you as the focus of the colonies is getting diminished, and it's going to set in this period where the colonies have a loosened restriction upon them. The navigation acts are being weakened. They're not really being enforced because the colonies are being basically left to their own devices as long as they're still pledging that economic loyalty. So the crown is fine with that as long as the colonies are doing their economic thing. And what's really important about this is that self-government will begin to grow over 70 years. I mean, that's the equivalent to an extent of essentially 3 generations. And that 70 years of salutary neglect will eventually end when we get to the French and Indian War, but that's very important because you're now having mechanisms of self-government taking effect in the New World. And these mechanisms of self-government will create the heritage of modern American government, this idea of self-government. And once you have these traditions of self-government, it's really hard to take it back. And so while Britain will eventually try to do so, this is going to eventually set the stage for the American Revolutionary War. So think about how far that we've just jumped. We went from King Philip's War to eventually the Glorious Revolution. We're going to lax our restrictions upon the colonies, which eventually is going to set the stage for the American Revolutionary War when Britain tries to take back some of its power. So you have 70 years where you're going to have traditions of self-government, and again, this is very important as the Glorious Revolution will distract England from the colonies to France, and salutary government will be set in 4,000 miles away from England to North America. So just to, again, sort of sum these changes up, We start with the King Philip's War, where that's going to get on the attention of King Charles II. Then you'll have the Glorious Revolution set in, which of course is going to allow for salutary neglect. Colonists are also going to arrest Andros, believe it or not, and of course Parliament will restore the original status of the colonies back. And again, as England is getting distracted by a myriad of different things going on from the Glorious Revolution, they're also going to be distracted by their French rival as well. So again, England is getting distracted from the colonies, if I cannot, really stress that point enough. So ultimately, salutary neglect is going to set in exchange, of course, for economic loyalty. But think about how those seeds are being planted for eventually the American Revolution. That is a very important key takeaway to have.